I know from my little world, working with mostly millennials, the thing that we've stumbled on just most recently. Uh, so I mean, I wouldn't really know. I'm no therapist or a social anthropologist or anything, but I am a pastor who's working with young men right now. And the thing that we've been able to really name is how deep shame exists in our hearts.
Mm.
And what that means is there's just this pervasive, I don't even think if we're not aware, it's not a conscious thought, but there's just a sense that if I brought my real life to someone, if I really brought what I'm really feeling, what I'm thinking, what I'm really struggling with, what is really broken about me, if I brought that to another human, actually, it would only it would only like further the realization that there's something fundamentally flawed about me, and I'm unlovable.
Yeah, it's just galvanize those facts already.
It would galvanize whatever that feeling is in me, that if I was really known, I wouldn't be loved. And so, you know, when you add like a digital world, where you're existing behind screens and you're not actually with people. I mean, my boys right now, I've got a 15-year-old and a 14-year-old, and they come home every day from school, and the very first thing they do is they aim for that gaming system.
Yep.
And that is their social world. They're not hopping on their bike and going down to Billy's house.
No.
Their social world is, and I hear them shouting at their friends in their rooms, and it is a social experience.
Dopamine hit. It makes it extremely addictive.
Yeah. But they're not experiencing a facial, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's very significant. One thing I would add to it, it's a particular type of shame.
Yeah.
It's a toxic shame.
Toxic shame.
Because there's a healthy shame which says, like, I'm limited.
Yeah.
Like, I have boundaries. I'm definitely in need of God. I'm in need of other people. I'm a frail human being, and that is healthy. That's good.
Yeah, because that drives you to improve or find answers or solutions.
Find community, find a relationship with God and others. But toxic shame is the one that says, I'm fundamentally and forever flawed. It's what the Bible calls condemnation. But what you brought up about that face-to-face contact, that, you know, this is a generation that has, you know, they're natives to kind of the digital context, the virtual context. So we come out of the womb and we're looking for our mother's face, and we want to attach to mom. And if mom is there and present, I can feel my feelings, and mom feels those feelings with me. This is all based on, like, this is real. This is based on the best science that we have, the best neurology, and actually decades of it.
Right.
And then I learned from mom, like, how to self-regulate and how to feel safe. And I can feel my anger, I can feel my fear, I can feel my sadness. And so first of all, we have just kind of the whole devastation of the kind of the family that now is multi-generational.
Yeah.
Right. And then you add to that, so many of the young men having grown up also relating through phones, relating through gaming systems, never really learning how to actually attune and attach to other human beings.
And what I would think that's interesting about that, now, like your sons are, so Beck and Reeve are what, 15, 16?
15 and 14.
Yeah. So they are digital natives. They've never known a world other. This is normal.
Oh, yeah.
This is the way you have a relationship.
Yeah. That's right.
Wow. And it's fascinating because if someone calls me, I'm not even going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even want to actually talk physically, not physically. I mean, talk virtually to somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Is that it? It's texting. It's got to be a text.
Rewiring everything.
Yeah.
Which is, again, it's these kind of protective layers of distance.
Yeah.
And there's been I don't know if you want to use the word discipling.
Yeah.
Of distance.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of like thinner and thinner and thinner layers of communication and thinner layers of attachment that is profoundly sad.
And then the other thing about it is that you've opened yourself up by being in that social world. You're opening yourself up to the online anger and the hate and the provocateurs and the spear throwers. We didn't grow up with that kind of stuff. I mean, it was like if bullying was somebody bumping you in the hallway and,
real human,
real contact.
Yeah.
Right. Which to me, I'd much rather have that than this kind of stuff. It's a different thing.
Anger. So Dr. Chibja talks about when the primary emotion, anger, the deep desire underneath that is actually a voice to be heard.
Yeah.
So when we feel an emotion, it's always connected to a deep desire. And James talks about, hey, the reason you're getting flipped upside down is you have these desires and they're not being met. And now you're trying to meet them in ways that are destructive. So desires are okay. But if you don't meet them in the right way, they become destructive. So when you feel anger, you have a voice that needs to be heard. And if it's not being heard in the right way, it becomes rage. And that's what we have. We have a culture of rage. Because there's people that their voice is not being heard. They're not in authentic relationship with anyone. They're lonely. They're isolated. So we have so much rage all the time, everywhere. It's overwhelming.
So true. So true.
Yeah, there's rage, just dysregulation, deep cynicism, like just a constant mistrust of the motive of someone else. So, I mean, this is kind of the world we live in. We talk about a great deal. So in every environment we're in, we're just constantly just hyper vigilant because we're like, if I say something, it doesn't matter what words I'm using. Those words are going to trigger someone somewhere. And then I'm going to get this
this blowback.
Yeah, this blowback from someone when actually the words that I'm using are just really benign. So it's ideas, words, concepts, and that's met by cynicism by someone else. So even in the online space is entirely, majority just simple. You can't make a comment without somebody in that thread having a
Right. There could be 20 people that wholeheartedly agree, but there's going to be one person that's going to at least.
Yeah. And they're going to fill in like an encyclopedia's worth of story about you. They're going to be like, oh, you said that because you are.
Exactly.
And so again, that's just a snowball, thing where now people are like, well, I'm not even going to try relationships. Because they're not safe. It's not safe to be in relationships with other people because they're so reactive. And we're not, it's not happening in these communities of attachment and communities that actually do offer a sense of healthy shame. We would call that group identity in our world, where it's like, hey, that's not what we do.
Right.
Would be a healthy reflection back to someone.
Right.
And then someone feels like, oh yeah, I did. I kind of missed the mark there. That would be that sense of healthy shame. Well, people don't get that when the family broke down or they're not in communities that offer that kind of support.
Right.
So they're all alone in their room on their computer and either contributing to the vitriol of the whole thing, or sort of passive observer, where they're like watching it, but they're like, "There's no way I'm going to stay."
I'm not getting in on that.
And I'm in a lot of relationships with people who they've given up on social media.
I hear more and more.
Is just going through the roof every time I'm there. So I may watch, but I'm not going to participate. So again, my voice isn't being heard. I'm a passive observer to the whole thing. I'm not jumping in. Now I'm not jumping in as human beings. Now I'm not even jumping in to be like digitally relational,
Right.
because it's too much.
Well, I was just reading in this article recently, and I don't know if it's true. It proclaimed it as being true. I read it on the internet, so it's got to be right. This, and I just didn't even think to research it before we started having this conversation today. But that in Australia, social media is prohibited for 16-year-olds and younger.
Oh man,
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I saw there is some kind of legislation that puts boundaries on it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that seems so wise. So un-American, but it seems so wise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did they notice? And I think there's some other countries that said the same thing.
Mhm.
We need to do something.
yeah.
Because it's got to be literally rewiring
Oh, it
the
is.
neural pathways.
What was that? Did you guys see that documentary? I think it was called The Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
Where they have the guys who designed Facebook and Instagram, and they literally were saying, we designed this to be addictive.
That's right.
Sure.
That was our
Well, they were successful.
Yeah.
And
Right.
none of them are allowing their children
Exactly.
to use
Exactly.
phones, right?
Yeah.
Most of them aren't. Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah, I watch it with my kids before they had phones. I watched
Yeah.
it with them and said, before you get a phone, we're going to watch this together, so you'll
Uh-huh.
know why
Exactly.
you're not going to get a social media account for
Yeah.
this amount of time.
Yeah.
But also why
So smart,
what you're
man.
gaining is doing to your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting because like our girls, it was a constant battle all the way through high school. But now, look, they have all those boundaries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They do not disturb. They put it away. They have this, I don't know, shalom, this centeredness, that is rare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the most important skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an essential part of parenting nowadays.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is still, parents are so under resourced. I mean, I know there's more available coaching than there ever has been before, but we're still, I just, like in the rush of this massive tidal wave of this whole new world. And I have a lot of compassion, because we're all trying to find our way in this completely like a new age.
Mm-hmm.
And we're still at the front end of it, what it means. And now AI.
No. It literally is like we are living while we're exploring and we have no idea what's ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And that's, especially back to the young men, it's, like you've been there. I've had this commitment for years of having an open fire on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that guys that are part of the network know, there's this space where there's going to be dudes that love you, will be present with you, and where there'll be some elders, and you can be raw here. It can be unedited.
Yeah.
You can show up a mess.
Yeah. And it really is a safe space. I know we use in terms of safe space, that sounds kind of hokey, but it's a safe space.
It is. It's like what seventh of fire is going to stay at the fire.
Yeah.
And it's profound, like the miracles that happen there, you know, and the life changes happen there. Because what young men need is to be with other people, other guys and men face to face.
Yeah.
Yes.
And someone who's glad to be with them.
Yeah.
Like that locks eyes with them. Like we have this little tradition, like with my fence, you come around this corner, and when someone comes around and you see them, it's like, you know, sound that person's name. Like it's like this, you know, celebration. They come
and also for neighbors like, I've been blowing all the gas.
and it's dude stuff. It's like we still smoke cigars, and we're gonna still talk about March Madness, and we're gonna have our whiskey, but then we're gonna talk about our souls.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk about our most important relationships, and we're gonna talk about what is Jesus saying to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what are you doing about
And
it?
I think that mixture of generations, and I mean, that's what the whole Sagebrush deal is about. You got to have that mixture of generations. You need the vigor of young men, but you need the wisdom of old guys that are just they're at I call it they're at porch life era. I'm at porch life era. What about you, Dave? I'm like I'm gonna sit on the porch, right? Talk to the young guys, pat them on the back, go get them.
Yep.
Come back and tell me how it went.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's the season. I find it interesting talking about the loneliness that pervades the young people that we're mentoring. But actually, those coming into this porch age fight loneliness as well.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And it may not be true for ones that have had a high-powered life of organizational leadership and being chairman on the board or whatever. They might welcome some of that porch life.
Sure.
But your average man that's reaching age of, say, retirement is fighting loneliness too.
Yeah.
And their spouses are like, the kids are gone. What's the meaning for me now at this stage? How can I connect to my kids, grandkids that live out of state? So they're not even around either, like the old days where you had social community and fabric with that.
Multi-generational.
The average family is 200 miles away from the grandparents.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So Sagebrush may meet this need. You get mentors, older men, mystics, whatever you want to call sages, that may have some on their own, so it may meet that
That's a
need
huge point.
and connect them with the young people that are certainly struggling with it.
Yeah.
And you got a point. You mentioned the breakdown of the family is a big part of it. Young men, young women don't even know what good family looks like,
Yeah, that's right.
and so they're navigating things. There's a couple of gals I've reached out to recently at a coffee shop, and they're almost proud to tell me across the counter. These are the bistros that, hey, I was over at my boyfriend's house last night. It's like they're proud to say, I'm socializing this way by living outside of marriage. And it's just sad. You feel sad for them. It's like that's the best they have to communicate to a guy they're selling coffee to.
Yeah.
And then the young men, too, are coming into situations where if they're counting on meeting people socially, let's say they desire to have a spouse, right? Kids, but all those things have been moved out, too. What's the average now? Meeting a spouse and getting married and then having kids, I think it might be in the 30s by the time the kids come along.
Yeah. It's been constantly crawling up. I know 15 years ago, it was like 28 was the average.
Yeah, and then the divorce rates are still high.
Yeah.
So they end up marrying and then it doesn't work out. They're late in life. The ladies are feeling like, man, the time is ticking.
Right.
I can have kids. It's just a snowball effect.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like even like the younger generation right now, they're delaying driving.
Yes.
I mean,
I heard about that.
Yeah.
It's hard to relate to that.
Yeah,
It is.
it's kind of.
And why is
It is.
that? What's why? I couldn't wait to drive, man. I was like,
Yeah,
That's kind of a rite of passage.
yeah. I just can't. I mean, I would do anything to get a car.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is personal to us.
yeah, because you've got,
Yeah, there's a car sitting in our driveway right now, and my oldest son is not that inspired to kind of get in the car and like to learn how to drive. But he has a car, and is not feeling like super incentivized.
well, do you think it's because,
And we were talking about a young man who's been I've been a very intentional father with him. He's got a very secure attachment. He is surrounded by multi-generational community.
Yeah.
And is seen and loved and affirmed
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And still is just
still,
not,
no, I've heard about that.
What do you think is?
we're talking about. But like
What does he say?
he doesn't know. He doesn't really know
He's trying to figure it out.
why. I think for him it's related to purpose. It's related to a job. If I could get a job, I would have a reason
To get in a,
yeah. But aside from that, like,
And I think
I was just looking for a way to just kind of get out of the house. I was just waiting to get free.
but see, I think,
That's where it's changed.
yeah, that's where it's changed. Because you don't have to go out the door to get out of the house
Yeah.
now.
Because people
You
are
can sit in your bedroom and you're out of the house.
He's in
Right.
his bedroom.
I think that's got to have a lot to do with
in
it.
his bedroom, and he's like connected to his friends on the phone.
Yeah.
Connected, in the game
Yeah.
sphere.
Mhm.
But actually, like the idea of like getting in your car, just drive over and surprise my friend at their house.
No,
Like,
Doesn't happen.
no, he's not.
because like you said a while ago, I mean, even for us now, we've been retrained. Like, I mean, you're one of my best buddies. I don't dare just call Rob up.
Yeah.
It's like, I text him, can you talk?
Can you talk?
That's what you do, right? And it used to be, not only would you call somebody, you just show up to somebody's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't do that.
Now the
You lost your mind.
hide.
Did you invite somebody over? I didn't invite anybody over. You swatted.
Yeah.
It's so changed.
Hey, I'm curious, Dave. Like, as you relate to, millennials, like, or even Gen Z kids, do you find that they have an idea of how to relate to you?
No, yes and no. There are some that are a little more highly functional they desire mentors
Yes.
and may seek them out,
Okay.
but it'll take them months
Yeah.
to initiate
Right.
if they do at all. I mean, there is a segment of the young people that are like, I don't really need the old guys in my life, or at least they probably desire it, but it's not at the forefront. But then there are ones, and those are the ones that get my attention. They're like, I really long to have a relationship with you.
Yeah.
I didn't have a good father or whatever. They'll come right and ask at some point, will you mentor me? But it's not uncommon for them to say, well, it took me months to work up the courage to ask you to do that.
Right. But there had to be some relational capital there, beforehand for them to
I think so.
get to that
I
place.
think so. It'd be interesting to examine that.
Yeah. What's interesting, in our church, we cannot keep people older than 55 at our church.
Really?
We just cannot keep. And I'm 52 now, so I don't know what that's going to mean for me. Yeah, I never figure it out. But we're kind of seeing this. It's kind of like magnets that are inverted or whatever. I don't know what that's called. Polarized. I wasn't good at this. Not when they're like attaching, but where they're
Pushing away from
each other. In these generations, there's a deep desire. Particularly millennials, for shepherding and guidance, for eldership.
Yeah.
And there's not a way. First, they may not have access. Secondly, they may not really have a sense of confidence that if I step forward and ask, that they would receive me.
Mm-hmm.
What we're also seeing from a boomer generation is a lack of awareness to know how to relate to millennials, and they just show up and go, well, they don't want to be with me.
Yeah.
They don't want to spend time with me.
Yeah.
And both of those things are totally not true.
It's not true.
They just can't find each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so what we try to tell, people that are older than 55, so Gen X and up, like, hey, if you're going to be here, you're kind of a missionary to the next generation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really hard because we're not a church that does goods and services for the boomer generation. We're saying, hey, if you want to show up, you kind of have to be a first mover.
Yeah.
Like, you have to show up and you have to say, there you are, young millennial man.
Yeah.
You don't know you need me.
Yes.
You don't, you feel like you need me, but you don't know how much you need me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to come toward you.
That's so
I'm going to
good.
pursue you.
Yeah.
Which actually then starts to hit deep into the core of every man's heart, which is, and it's back to the attachment wound. Did my nuclear dad actually pursue me?
Yeah.
Did he actually pursue me? I mean, I knew he was in the room with me, or maybe he was in the house, but he was distracted doing something else, or he was distracted by work. But did he see me? Did he get me?
Yeah.
And then did he go, hey, not only do I see you or get you, but I'm coming after you.
Yeah.
Come with me on this trip.
Yeah.
Come with me to this experience. Let's go get a burger. And most older dads They just didn't even know.
No.
Yeah.
It's not that they intentionally didn't do it. They just didn't have what I think some of the content is out right now. And it really is this attachment theory content that's saying, hey, all of your kids need to feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. You know, and where that didn't happen, there's deep attachment wounds that need to be healed. And actually what we are seeing is that when it does happen, starting to see these young millennial guys there's two things that are happening. One, they are getting reparented by these older stage men, like fathered, you know? And so these deep parts of their hearts are actually like learning what it means to be a man by being with a man who's pursuing it. So maybe their dad didn't do it, but this fatherly figure is coming in. And, you know? Not only that, stories of that happening are actually reparenting their heart. That's the trip. Like where it's not even actual. I mean, there's such a hunger there that even in the mention of it, the story, the imagination of it can like reparent their heart.
Yeah.
And bring them more toward their own sons in a different way. But then there's also this reparenting thing that's happening in the older generation as they actually make a move to the younger generation, where they're like, I'm going to be a dad for you the way my dad wasn't for me. And even just reaching, even just stepping in and going, I will see you. I will pursue you. I will be a person you can bring your story to. You know? And I won't freak out and treat you like you're a problem to solve. If there's nothing you can say to me right now that's going to make me recoil or be like, what? It's going to make me come more toward you. Like all of that. I kind of feel like, and maybe that's the beauty of what you're doing right now, is you're creating an environment where we can find one.
Yeah.
You know? Where we can find one.
And the bottom line to it, or the important thing, and I kept hearing this thread throughout what you're just saying there, John, and that's why we're doing this. There has to be intentionality because we have lost the platforms, we've lost the serendipitous situations that are causing the multi-generations to be rubbing elbows in a day to day. We don't have those. We don't live that way anymore. So we have these separations. So one of the huge words to older men and older women in what you just said is you have to take the lead in making the invitation to these relationships. And that was one of the things that Jesus really did when he said, follow me. He was doing the opposite of what most rabbis did, because during that time, it was for a young man to find a rabbi and say, can I follow you? Jesus flips it, says, come follow me. And so obviously, we're not Jesus, right? We're doing our best to follow Jesus. So we're not asking them, I'm your sensei or whatever, but we are saying, hey, you can join my life, join Elbow Learning, and I'm willing to, tell you probably just as much as what I've learned not to do is what I have. But that's the best education that's the cheapest education you can get to somebody else's, right? So I think that was great what you were sharing.
The other thing that I have been so blessed by is when you have a large enough community, an intentional enough community, and a consistent enough community, the reparenting experience becomes deep enough and rich enough because God the Father is mediating himself differently through different people. And so the different aspects of his character, the different skills that I didn't get in the house of origin that I grew up in, you'll have a particular grace that Dave doesn't have. And Dave's going to have a particular grace that you don't have. And you're going to have a particular grace. And we need both men and women in that picture. But but I have this circle of guys, and I think of how each one of them has parented me in a different way. And how I've parented them in a different way. And it's like a fathering and a brothering that happens over time that is profound.
Absolutely.
And I know for me in my journey, when I started to begin to realize these different orphan pockets that were in my heart, my dad was amazing in some ways, and just like any other dad, there was huge gaps in other ways. And when I first started to really intentionally do the work and see those gaps, this sense of overwhelm of like, how's this going to get better? How's this going to get fixed?
Mm-hmm.
I remember even the first time I was working with this therapist and we were doing narrative work on some really painful memories. And then even this person asked me to describe how I felt about that memory. And I couldn't even, I was like, I was a 7-year-old. Like I couldn't even find words to describe it.
Yeah.
I literally didn't even have the language because I was like, oh, that it was bad. That's all I could say, you know, and I realized in some areas of my life, I'm literally like emotionally 7 years old.
Yeah.
Like I got stuck in this part of my life, of my story, and it was so humbling. But then realizing in my community, there's other men and there's other people that, you know, in that particular orphan pocket, God's given me this friend
Yeah.
who is actually a father to me.
Wow.
And that what I thought would maybe take a lifeline or lifetime, like it's actually 4 or 5 years. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's this miraculous surge of growth and exchange and mediation of grace.
Right.
And then at the same time, I'm doing the same thing for that brother in another area.
Yeah.
And that is amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what Sagebrush can spark in people's lives.
And it's life-giving. It's life-giving for both of you. Right?
Exactly.
It's not a one-way street as far as giving back. And
that can happen across generations.
yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to ask why men in their 50s aren't hanging around at church, but I will say from my experience, so I might come back to that and let you answer it. But it's interesting when we talk about the dynamics at play between sages and young men. Not only do they need to meet, but they need to see something modeled for them to want to
Yes.
connect.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the gathering, from what I understand, and the underground is a model of church that allows for more maybe life on life.
Absolutely.
Because a traditional church model would be, even a good Bible teaching model would be, come in, they may get a Sunday school class with an older guy, but it's just essentials of knowledge concerning discipleship. There's not this level of what we might call mature discipleship or disciple making that the older man is giving his life away and modeling that.
Right. Life on life.
Life on life. Or even the sage, I've heard somebody say that can be a time of radical discipleship where you're giving your death away. You're modeling,
Yes.
I've been crucified in Christ and more
I
I
like
live.
that.
You've reached this level of life where you don't need the accolades and the positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're just like dead to all that.
Yeah, you're done with that.
Yeah.
Where you've kind of come to a place where you're like, it's not about me now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is about someone else. And I think that, so I don't want to bunny trail on this too much, but my answer for why, you know, people north of 55 aren't really sticking around is, well, first would just be loneliness. Like, they need friends too.
Yes,
You know,
right.
they need friends too. And I think our greatest, you know, mountain decline is that first people have to come that want to give their life away to the next generation, and there have to be lots of them so that they can have a community with one another.
Right.
And so the fact that
It's going to get sticky enough to cause
yeah,
new ones to start accumulating.
yeah, that's right. So the fact that we just don't have a great community of, you know, people older than 55 has been the first challenge. The challenge before that is that there has been, and I think we're generations deep. Like we're all of this that we're talking about didn't come about with the smartphone. The smartphone created a tipping point into what was already latent and already there. So already what was forerunning this level of, you know, digital age was, I think what you're talking about was a relational maturity issue. Where boomers, what we're finding is that they run with a certain kind of value set. And, well, I mean, Jim Wilder is a guy that has, you know, neurotheologian, the life model, that through every life stage, there were things that either did or didn't happen at every life stage. And what we're seeing is that American life, our life as Americans, is really only producing people that are majoritively at like an adolescent to young adult maturity level, period.
And then if you experience trauma as a child,
That's right.
you can get literally stuck emotionally
That's right.
at whatever trauma
That's right.
experience you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we're seeing is that like a boomer generation is older in their body, but they're not walking with the same kind of emotional maturity that their, generations before
Right.
walk with. So American culture is not producing elders.
Mm-hmm.
We're not producing elders. So we're not actually producing men that get to the frame of mind that you're talking about, where they're like, I'm in the stage of life where young men will want to come sit at my feet and learn from me, and that's good. Instead, we're producing men that want to retire, disappear, live their best life in their golden years and not contribute to anybody else.
Yeah.
And so that's a maturity breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of booking, on
That's a great
these.
point,
Yeah,
So
we're kind of
good.
booking. And so there actually needs to be some of those gaps filled, I think, in the boomer generation where they're like, no, hold on, I have these gaps that didn't happen to help me kind of go from being like a 20-something-year-old functioning man. Like, for instance, what we're seeing is that a lot of these men will get married when they're 25, and when they lose their wife, when they get widowed,
Mm-hmm.
they don't enter back into the dating pool as a 65-year-old man. They kind of enter back into it as a 25-year-old man
Mm.
in their 60s.
Mm. Wow.
So it's kind of like, or they just disappear and end up snowbirding somewhere and live like they're in college.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know what I mean? So you can kind of
Yeah.
see it in
What
some
a-
of these cultural
what a phenomena.
artifacts. But there's just some stuff that needs to get filled out. That would be our answer for why people aren't sticking around.
Mhm.
Is because the ones that do come and they're here and giving their life away, they get tired.
Yeah.
They get tired because they don't have friendship they don't have friends that are wanting to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.